Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Game Breakdown. I am Chris Solomon, and today we are coming to you with the first of one of our new review series that we are calling Retrospective Reviews, where we are going to focus on games that have been released 10 or more years ago. So we wanted to do this because obviously there's games in everyone's collection that have been sitting there for a long time, and maybe you don't get to play them as much anymore because they're not the shiny new toy. So I was thinking about, well, maybe dusting off a few of these games and looking at them and putting out there what we feel works after that amount of time that we've owned these, and then what parts of the games fall flat for us at this point. So we'll kind of be dispensing with the normal, here's how you set it up, here's how you play, aspects that we concentrate on with our videos about the newer games, and we're really going to focus on what works and what doesn't. So our first one in the series is going to be looking at Lords of Waterdeep, which just came out 10 years ago in 2012. And so what we'll do is a quick overview of just, if you've never seen this game before, um, a little bit of like what kind of game it is, how it plays. That'll be super quick, and then we'll go over what we like and what we don't like. And then we'll culminate in a rating at the end, and maybe how that rating has changed since we first played it. Before we go any further, I'd like to invite you to hit the subscribe button so you can check out any of our new content that we put out. We also have a website up. It's boardgamebreakdown.com. A lot of the reviews we do on YouTube, we also put up text versions, but there are some other reviews up on the website that we don't do videos on, where we concentrate on some maybe solo type variants that we find out through different websites like Board Game Geek. And we are an Amazon affiliate, so if you see anything on the website that you like that is available at Amazon, there's a link that you can click right there, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. You shop at Amazon just like you would normally do, and that just helps support the site and allows us to continue to put out content. You can also find us on Instagram at board.game.breakdown. So I think that is all of the administrative duties to take care of. So let's jump right in, and we'll talk about how to play Lords of Waterdeep in a very quick version. Let's do it. All right, so Lords of Waterdeep at its core is a worker placement game. You've got workers, as you see here. Each each player starts out with a certain amount depending on how many players. So in a two-player game, which is this is what it's set up for, you get 4 workers, and then there's an additional worker placed down there that you will get at a later round. And so much like other worker placement games, you're going to take your worker, you're going to place it out on one of these 9 action spaces, and it's going to trigger whatever the action is. Majority of the actions are to pick up these cubes. So you've got these 4 different colored cubes there. Those are supposed to represent different adventurers that you are hiring to complete quests and stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But sometimes they also give you gold to purchase things, and then there's a few other extra action spaces that do other things throughout the game. So you take turns with your workers. You can get victory points as you're playing, and you've got a token here that goes around the outside of the board. So it is definitely a game that you kind of know as you're playing who is winning at all times. You do get a special lord at the beginning of the game that instructs you on kind of what types of quests to do. And if you do those quests, you get bonus points at the end of the game. So you get bonus points for that, and then also for like your gold and resources that are left over at the end of the game. But for the most part, you know who is winning. I mentioned 9 spaces. There are also additional spaces printed on the board that are for these buildings that you can purchase, and they go here, and then whoever purchased them, it controls them, and then that it becomes additional spaces that people can use throughout the game, so you're not just stuck on those 9. And the nice thing about that is different buildings come out each game, so it's a little different variation every time. Your quest cards is what drives your resources. So like this quest card needs 2 whites, an orange, and then 2 gold. Once you have those resources, then you can complete the quest, and it goes into your little stack, and there's a reward printed on it. And then there are also these intrigue cards down here that allow you to, some of them are like attack cards where you play them against your opponent, and some of them just give you additional resources or abilities throughout the game. You go back and forth, and then once everyone has expended their workers, they pick them up, and then the next round goes or triggers the next round, and you have 8 rounds that are basically rinse and repeat. At the end, whoever has the most victory points is the winner. So that's the quick and dirty gameplay. So we'll start out with first are a couple things that we still like about this game even after 10 years, and we think still works with this game. So let's get right into that. Here are our 3 things that we think work splendidly in Lords of Waterdeep. All right, so number 1, the first thing that we really like is the way the buildings and the control of the buildings works. So like I said in the overview, you can purchase new buildings. So what happens is you take your worker and you place it on the builder's hall. That allows you to pick up one of these buildings. They each have a cost in the top right hand corner. Sometimes they're 3 gold, sometimes they're 8 gold. You buy the building, and first when you buy it, however many victory points are on it, you get to count those. And what happens is each round, 1 victory point is placed on each building that's still out there. So in effect, any buildings that are maybe not as powerful, but they sit around for a couple rounds, they're going to get victory points stacked on top, and then it might be worth spending the money to get the building and get the victory points. But when you buy a building, you place your little control marker in the corner, and each player has these. So if our yellow player were to buy one, they could stick one of theirs there. And these act now as normal action spaces. Yellow could go here, red could go here on a turn. They are a little more powerful, I think, than the normal actions, though some of them are kind of weak. But the thing I really like about them is in the corner of a building down here in the right-hand corner, it has an owner power. So what happens is if the opponent visits that building, which they're totally allowed to do, so we'll pretend that yellow goes here, they get to trigger that action. But because red is the owner, the red team is going to get a black cube. So I like that there's some incentive there. So you buy these buildings, you put them out, and you are free to play on the other players' buildings. But you do have to keep in mind that they're going to get a little something out of it. I like that none of the rewards are crazy. They're not going to change the game dramatically just because you decide to use your opponent's space, but it's enough to give them a little bump and make it worth your while to kind of decide, well, do I want to go here and let them get a black, or should I just go here and maybe I get 1 less black cube but don't give them anything? So I really like how that works. I like that kind of control aspect of the worker placement game, because a lot of worker placement games just kind of the only competition is really like, oh, you've got a player there, so I can't put a worker there. This is nice to have that little bit of interaction with that. All right, so the second thing that I think really works, and it's kind of along the same lines, are these intrigue cards and how you play them. All right, so they are down here, and they are tied to the action space called Waterdeep Harbor. So let's put this worker back over here. When a turn comes up and you would like to play an intrigue card, you're going to take your worker and you're going to place them at Waterdeep Harbor. And you'll see that there's 1, 2, 3 spaces to place workers. So whereas a lot of the other spaces, except for the Cliffwatch Inn, only allows 1 worker, the harbor allows 3. And it is important that you know if you're 1, 2, or 3, as that is important at the end of this little action that we're going to take. So once you place a worker there, then you get to play an intrigue card from your hand. So the intrigue cards come in varying types. So I'm just going to read this one. It's called Crime Wave, and it's called a utility. That's the type of action it is. So it says take 2 black cubes, or those are considered rogues, from the supply and place them in your tavern. So if yellow did that, he would get 2 black cubes and place them in his tavern. Then choose 1 opponent. That opponent takes a rogue from the supply and places it in his or her tavern. So in this case, it would be red. They also get 1 of these. And then this gets discarded. There are also other intrigue cards that are called attack cards. So same thing, you place a worker there, and then if you place this card down, it says each opponent removes 1 orange from his or her tavern and returns it to the supply. So in this case, if red had an orange, they would have to take their warrior or fighter and place it back in the supply. For each opponent that could not do so, take 1 orange from the supply and place it in your tavern. So if red did not have any oranges, yellow would be awarded an orange this turn. And then this goes in the discard pile. So at the very end of this round, where all of our workers are out, so we're just going to throw them out in different areas. Let's say that's how it ended up. And the worker placement is over. You now circle back to Waterdeep Harbor, and starting from 1 to 3, the first person gets to pick up their worker and redeploy them. So they could go here, and we could get 2 blacks. Now there is no one else at Waterdeep Harbor in this example, so the round is over. But if there was a red there, then now it would be his turn to take this and redeploy somewhere. Maybe he gets a white. So why do I like this? I'm really not normally for the gotcha type attacks in games. I like some interaction, but I don't really like the interaction that hurts another player. That's just not normally in my style. But I think that these are all pretty small in how much they affect you. Again, just like the building and the owner powers, there's not going to be anything that just you put the card down and it just turns the tide of the game. Right? That can really make your opponent feel like, oh, now I can't get out from underneath this. And that could be a problem. So I'm glad that that feeling doesn't happen. The closest it can come, I think, is that some of the intrigue cards are called mandatory quests, where it basically forces them to have a quest card and they have to complete that before they can complete any of theirs. And that can be a little bit of a mess because it could require them to have cubes that they have none of right then, and then they got to work on getting those. But from what I've seen, it only usually needs 3 or 4 cubes. It's not a lot, so it doesn't set anyone back. The second thing I really like about this is the fact that we are getting to redeploy our worker from the harbor. So you're not just spending a turn attacking your opponent or playing one of these cards to get some extra resources. You're then getting to reuse that worker for something else. Now, depending on how many buildings you have out, it could be very small. There could be a very small choice of where to place your additional workers. because they could really have used up a lot of the spaces, but there's always something open. And I just like the idea of that double use of the worker. I think that's pretty nifty and creative way of doing it. All right, lastly, the third thing that I really think works in this game is the quest cards, specifically the flavor text, the pictures, the type, what you need to do the quest. Like all that feels like a really nice, cohesive package. So the game takes place in the Dungeons and Dragons realm. I know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't really know if there's like characters from the game or if this Waterdeep place exists in a book or something. But you can tell that there's a lot of lore and world creation having happened. There's all these like different factions names on things. Um, and so when you have a quest card, it feels like it's giving you the information you need to really think like, oh, if I'm sending out adventurers on this quest, like what am I doing? um, and the types are kind of cool. So there's like a type of commerce. The quest is called a commerce type, and all of those typically take money and resources, but then they end up giving you a lot of money as a reward for the most part. There are piety um, quests that usually have something to do with like temples or spiritual mysticism type stuff. There are skullduggery quests that are kind of themed around rogues and backstabbing and things like that. So I just like how all of it kind of comes together in a nice package. Um, no, theme wise, you don't feel like you're actually hiring worker or adventurers and sending them off to do this and this. I mean, let's be honest, they're just cubes. Um, but I think maybe that's why the quest card itself stands out more to me, because you are just dealing with these cubes. So it's nice to have the information on there. All right, so those were three things I picked out that I think, even after all this time, still really work and really makes this game stand out. So unfortunately, let's jump over to the three things that I've chosen that do not work out so well for me anymore. All right, so I'm jumping right back into the quest cards. Even though my previous point was that I like this cohesive package with the kind of thematic details, what I don't like about this is the way you have to get resources, and that the resources all are almost identical for the type of card that you're getting. So, for example, I have a lord here. At the end of the game, you score 4 points for each commerce quest and each warfare quest you complete. All right, so I'm going to be gunning for commerce cards, and let's see if I can find a warfare card. Okay. So the warfare cards all take a lot of orange cubes, because those are the fighters. Those are the fighter adventurers. All right, so the problem with that is there's only one space out here to get orange cubes. There is a chance that you get no extra auxiliary buildings that either A, give you orange cubes, or B, let you trade in a cube for something else. Because there are some buildings that allow you to trade in like a black cube and get a purple cube. Those are nice, but one of the playthroughs I played leading up to this review, we got none of those. We also got no additional orange card or orange cube spaces. My wife and I both had lords that were going to give us bonus points for completing warfare. So we needed orange cubes for like every quest we had. We had one spot for 2 cubes, and that was it. And like this one needs 3, but some of them that score you like 25 points, you need like, I don't know, 8 cubes, orange. So it just really narrowed down. It's one thing to have some competition, but that wasn't even fun. There was no way to basically complete the quest that your lord asked for. So, okay, maybe you don't do those. But if I back off on that and let my wife score those and get oranges, she's going to get 4 points for every one of those quests at the end of the game, and I'm going to lose out on that. So it's the same with the other types. Like piety, it almost always needs white cubes. And if that's what you need to get your bonus points, there's one space with a white cube. If you get no other locations with white cubes, you just really get jammed into not being able to do the thing that's going to award you the bonus points at the end of the game. So I don't think that works very well. Um, it just really pigeonholes you and limits what you can do. Yes, you can go off and do the other quests, but again, if you're sacrificing those bonus points at the end of the game, both playthroughs that I've played, we were within maybe 10 points of each other. So that really came down to who scored the most of the bonus point quests because they're 4 points apiece. So I don't think that works all that well. It's not my favorite aspect of the game. Second thing, closely related to that, is I mentioned taking a worker and placing it on Builder's Hall allows you to buy a building. All right, so my problem here is that only one person can buy a building per round, unless there's like some special thing that allows you to go to that space again or occupy, even if that space is occupied, do it again. There, honestly, I haven't seen that many times in the game, so I don't even know how many exist. But the thing that I like the most is the extra buildings and the owning them and that whole part of the game. But you see now that you can only basically build one building per round. One person can build one building per round. And that's if you had enough money to buy a building every single round. Now, there are 10 open spaces and there are 8 rounds. So I guess they're assuming that someone is going to be able to, at least one player is going to buy one each turn. And then additionally, I guess there's 2 open spaces and for these special powers that might pop up. But every time I've played, we've gotten 4 or 5 out. Now, most time that's 2 players, so maybe that has to do with it. But I just feel like it's really throttled, where you have these cool buildings that come out and the owners of them get these extra perks, but then they're really limiting even putting the buildings out. And it's not as if the buildings are all that powerful that you need to limit them. I think it would have been a lot easier to maybe have it where each player could take that action one time per round. So maybe red could take it and yellow could take it. It's very similar if you've ever played Everdell, the Belfair expansion. It has a market tile, and you can place one worker there per player. So that would still allow us to buy buildings one a turn, but maybe both players do. And it would also maybe add some competition on if you didn't have enough open spaces for the buildings, you really need to pick and choose what you're buying to put out, because if the rule is once the spaces are closed up, you can't buy any more buildings, you would need to be a little more selective. Right now, if no one's used that space and I don't really have any cubes I need to get, I just go down there and throw some money at one of the spots and put it out there. Don't really think about it because, hey, whatever, we got all these open spaces. So I think that that's a missed opportunity there, that it only allows you to build one um, building per round, no matter how many players there are. The last thing that stood out to me as just kind of not working is the overall trajectory of the game. It's just flat, honestly. So I said there were 8 rounds. They're down there at the bottom of the board, and you keep track of them with these victory points. Like I said, you take the victory points and then you place them on the buildings that are left. But every round is basically the same. The one difference is round 5, you do get an extra worker. So you play with an extra worker in rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8. But besides that, there is no difference. I felt like in round 7, I'm basically doing the exact same things I did in round 2. Sure, there are some quests that you have to really collect a lot of stuff for to get 25 points, but most of the time you're able to collect that stuff within one turn, 1 or 2 turns. So it's not like you're building up to that and then being like, boom, got all these points. And one of the playthroughs I did, I scored a couple of those 25s really early on, and then the rest of the game I was just like putting out these little puny, win 6 point quests, and it just kind of felt like, I really did something at the beginning of the game, and now I'm just kind of petering out. So I don't remember having that feeling when I first played this game, so I don't know if it's just because, again, it's been out for 10 years, or maybe there's been other things that I started playing that are in my collection that do have a more, increased trajectory of the game, but that just really fell flat for me after playing this 2 times. And that was probably the worst offender, that it just really just kind of fizzled out as I went. All right, so those are the 3 things that we really like about this game and the 3 things that we do not. So what kind of rating are we going to give this? I'm thinking, because I don't want to be too harsh on it, because I really like this game from before and it's really popular, but I think I would have to go with a 6. And this is 1 to 10. So I I think before maybe it was probably a 7 or a 7.5. And I actually looked on Board Game Geek before doing this, and it's like a 7.2 or something on there. So it's in that realm. And I feel like back when I first bought it and in the first couple of years, it probably sat in that same area for me, but I definitely think it's dropped. If someone were to want to play this, then by all means, I would play it with them. I don't think, also, if someone had never played a worker placement and the kind of artwork and theme, was interesting to them, then I would probably pull this out too, because I think it's an excellent way to learn the mechanics of a worker placement. But for someone who's played it before or has no interest in it, I would feel no need to like, oh, we got to get this to the table because it's so awesome. It just doesn't do that for me anymore. So, I mean, honestly, with this being the first retrospective review, I don't know how many games after 10 years are going to hold or increase that same appeal. We'll have to see. But I think my final rating for Lords of Waterdeep after 10 years is a 6. All right, so thanks everyone for watching. Again, this is our first go at a retrospective review. We've got a couple more in the pipeline of games that have been out for 10 or more years that we want to take a look at. Just again, hit up our website, boardgamebreakdown.com, go to Instagram, board.game.breakdown, and subscribe here on YouTube to stay in touch with us. Let us know what you think about the videos, what you think about the written reviews, comment, hit us up on any of the socials. We just really want to hear from board gaming fans and do whatever we can to improve and bring you all more content that you want. So again, I'm Chris from Board Game Breakdown, and thank you for watching.